Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to be talking about self-actualization as it's defined by Abraham Maslow, a well-known figure in the field of humanistic psychology during the 20th century. I want to define what it means, suggest ways in which it can be achieved, and provide reasons for why you may want to reach self-actualization yourself. Most people have a makeshift idea of what will make them feel happy and fulfilled in life. We live in a world that tells us that happiness is something you can buy in the form of nice things and pleasurable experiences. But if you take a look around at society, you'll find a countless number of people who are very discontent in their lives, despite being blessed with good jobs, beautiful homes, and access to modern conveniences. It's become common on social media to see people who seem to have everything actively looking for problems in their lives. Women on social media who have children, financial stability, and wonderful husbands compile lists of every complaint they can think of to find an excuse for divorce. It's hard not to notice the growing number of people claiming they've been wronged by society as they wallow in what they define as traumatic experiences. 1/3 of U.S. citizens now have either a form of mental illness or an addiction problem, or both. The question I can't help but ask is why? Why is no one happy? It's not a secret that material things don't have much to do with happiness. This is a main tenet in many religious traditions such as Buddhism, which teaches that it is our attachment to the temporary that actually causes more suffering than it eliminates. Buddhism also teaches that a state of mind exists outside the realm of suffering, and that it's possible to attain this higher level of consciousness. Like Buddhism, Maslow's theory also tells us that it's possible to live in a way that brings a sustained state of satisfaction, in which our natural gifts can be fully realized and our passions can be pursued, balanced by the challenges that make us sharper and stronger. We can discover the competence to solve our own problems and overcome obstacles, which brings an intrinsic and lasting form of happiness. Maslow called this process self-actualization. The way our society is structured keeps us in a constant state of want. No matter how much we have, we always want more. Self-actualization is the antidote to the restlessness, the meaninglessness, and the boredom that have dominated the collective psyche of our culture. Despite the vacuous nature of materialism, Maslow's theory asserts that a certain level of prosperity is necessary to provide us with the fundamental needs that form a solid foundation for self-actualization to take place. Not only is society not conducive for the kind of self-development required to ascertain this mindset, it actively incentivizes against it. This is because self-actualized people know that they don't need extravagance. They don't need collective validation, and they damn sure don't need social media. People who are self-actualized, who have a strong identity and know how to find satisfaction in the mundane, are not nearly as profitable as insecure and dysphoric consumers who are trained to assign status to aesthetics and seek approval over morality. Status means nothing to self-actualized people because they have the ability to assign their own value to things using their personal judgment. Our institutions are designed to keep people in permanent debt, forcing them to work jobs that offer more income for less humanity and less creativity. Mastery has become a scarcity, and those who deviate from the social script they are given are stigmatized. Let's face it, society doesn't want you to self-actualize. It doesn't even want you to self-develop. This is because self-actualized people are harder to control. I don't know about you, but this alone motivates me to seek it, not just because it's covertly forbidden, but because I truly and deeply desire it. I want my life to have a purpose. I see darkness slowly enveloping our world, and I choose to stand against it. In this video, I'll be offering my perspective on self-actualization, along with some techniques that I've used to further my personal development. If you decide to embark on this journey, you should know that it can be a lonely road. You will cross multiple finish lines, but you'll hear no applause. You may alienate people. You might realize that those you have called friends are not your friends. But hopefully you will make your own way, no matter how much you may stumble. Everyone is clumsy in one way or another, and you are not alone in this endeavor. The term self-actualization was originally coined by a psychiatrist named Kurt Goldstein and first appeared in the field of psychology in the 1930s. Goldstein described it as the intrinsic development of all organisms that compels them to realize their own potential and to remain optimal for as long as possible without injury. It was later adapted by Abraham Maslow in 1943 when he published his hierarchy of needs theory, which put forth that there are levels of human needs and that only after satisfying basic needs such as food, water, shelter, and safety can a person start to focus on higher needs such as belonging to a group and gaining self-esteem. His original theory did not include the quintessential pyramid that modern psychology pairs with Maslow's framework. The image of the pyramid was later created by businesses and psychologists to illustrate his theory. So this masterpiece right here that I've drawn out to provide you with some kind of a visual aid for you to see what the pyramid means. So it starts at the bottom with the base and moves up. So for instance, for the physiological needs, you have air, water, food, shelter, and reproduction. So once these things are met, then you can move up to safety, which is security, stability, and health. And then love and belonging, which is like family, relationships, acceptance, and community. Then you have esteem, which is like respect, status, self-esteem, self-confidence, and recognition by the group. And then at the very top, you have self-actualization, which is integrity, morality, fulfillment, and creativity. Maslow asserted that, in general, lower, more fundamental needs must be met before ascending to higher needs. However, he also noted that the process isn't strictly linear, meaning that it's possible for people to sometimes reach higher states of consciousness when not all basic needs are secure. So how does self-actualization differ from self-improvement? Self-improvement is a broad term. It necessarily precedes self-actualization because when people develop parts of themselves that they're not naturally good at, they correct deficiencies, build competence across multiple areas, and gain new skills in order to meet unmet lower and intermediate needs. Through self-discipline, this can be done by learning self-control, getting an education or training, working out, improving emotional regulation, enhancing relationships, or reading more books. Whatever areas need to be refined. The journey itself is unique for each person because everyone has their own personal strengths and weaknesses. The key is knowing which qualities to cultivate and which to restrain. Carl Jung referred to this process as individuation. The goal is to gain access and proficiency of your weaknesses so that you may weave them together with your strengths and achieve wholeness. This is known as integration. Self-actualization, by contrast, isn't about fixing yourself. It's about integration founded on stability, using the skills gained from self-improvement to express your fullest potential through integrity, creativity, and contribution. Self-actualization is a deliberate choice, not an obligation or trend, and it takes on many forms. It could be writing a book, composing music, inventing something new, or raising children to become capable adults with the necessary tools for their own self-actualization one day. Think of it as planting a tree. Maturity is the soil, self-discipline is the water, and self-actualization is the fruit. So what are some prerequisites that must happen before self-actualization? A person who wants to embark on the adventure of self-actualization is usually someone with a deep need for growth. They might have an intuitive sense that there is more to being alive than their current paradigm. The journey begins by taking full responsibility, leaving behind any victim mindset and the habit of blaming others. It also requires a commitment to truth, even when that truth shatters comfortable illusions. People who self-actualize begin by admitting their ignorance and dedicating themselves to learn new things as often as possible through direct experience or self-education. As you develop, you will gain a firmer sense of your identity. This means becoming aware of all sides of your personality, even the parts of yourself you may not like. It's important to understand that working on your imperfections won't make them disappear because they are part of the human condition, but working to improve them removes obstacles and strengthens your abilities. For many, this process unfolds over years, adding layer after layer to the foundation for deeper growth. So what are some hindrances or things that can prevent you from being self-actualized? One important lesson that I was able to derive from my research is that even after reaching self-actualization, regression is possible whenever a lower need on Maslow's hierarchy is no longer being met. Conflict with the spouse, the loss of self-esteem, or unmet physical needs can all pull someone out of self-actualization until the issue is resolved. This shows that self-actualization isn't a permanent state, but a continuous process. The number one hindrance or barrier to self-actualization is fear of failure. This is because this intricate process requires trying, failing, integrating, and growing. Failure is not the enemy, it's only feedback. And feedback reveals our shortcomings and pushes us to aspire. What makes this easier said than done is that failure can often carry humiliation, which is one of the worst feelings there is, especially in today's world where visible mistakes prompt people to whip out their phones and record in order to, amuse themselves or others. However, humiliation and humility both derive from the same Latin root, humus, which means close to the ground. Humiliation is the experience of being involuntarily brought down in front of others. It wounds pride, attacks the ego, and feels like rejection. However, if integrated, the experience of humiliation can transform into humility, which is the conscious choice of being lowered in front of others. Humility makes us aware of our limitations. It allows us to break free of the constraints of our ego and strengthens identity. Humiliation can act as the substrate from which humility can blossom. Doing this as an actualized person requires the courage to fail. Another major obstacle is the absence of a cohesive sense of self, which is something I talked about in my last video. Without a stable identity, self-development is like building a house on sand. Likewise, having low self-worth can block growth because those who don't believe they deserve to improve often seek approval from others become hyper-perfectionists, and relent to negative self-talk and shame. When a person becomes absorbed by self-loathing, they lose faith in their ability to recover from even minor setbacks. On the opposite end, narcissism is another major barrier. Being able to confront the undesirable aspects of ourselves is crucial to the process of integration, but narcissistic people deny their flaws entirely, which blinds them to the existence of their shadow. By refusing to admit their imperfections, they cut themselves off completely to the process of integration. For this reason, narcissistic people are the least likely of all people to develop and self-actualize. Other hindrances include addiction, whether to substances or behaviors which undermine agency and discipline. Even actualized individuals can relapse into old habits under stress. While physical health isn't technically a strict requirement for self-actualization, taking care of your body through diet and exercise enhances self-discipline, stabilizes mood, and reinforces self-esteem, all of which support various needs within the hierarchy. I also want to quickly note that having a solid family structure is also crucial to this process. The formation of a strong and intact family provides us with a variety of needs, many of which form the bedrock of Maslow's pyramid. Any major disruption to the family, such as divorce, can result in psychological chaos, leading to cognitive regression. So what are some attributes and descriptors for self-actualization? The first attribute of self-actualized people is a firm and consistent identity. These people know exactly who they are and what they believe in. Their personality generally doesn't change depending on who they're with. They value authenticity and honesty. They don't require external validation because they have the mental framework and the confidence in their own sense of judgment to affirm their feelings through self-reflection. They may enjoy receiving compliments and validation from other people, but they aren't dependent on it. By the time people reach self-actualization, they've already developed an inner compass which guides their behavior, and they hold themselves accountable, morally speaking. They aspire to live with integrity and reject hypocrisy. These people are aware of their imperfections and are able to acknowledge their flaws and mistakes without spiraling into self-loathing. They understand their own limitations and may even speak openly about their problems because they're comfortable in their own skin. They also have the confidence to believe that they can endure anything. Having resilience is one of the best qualities a person can have, and you'll see this a lot in self-actualized people. In fact, they may even take on adversity with the attitude of seeing it as a way to improve. They aren't frightened by challenges. They're intrigued by them. Additionally, self-actualized people feel an inner calling to contribute good things to the world and create things that will outlast them, such as art, charity foundation, or children. So here are some examples that I've come up with of people and like what self-actualized people look like. So number one is pursuing a passion or creative endeavor. So painting, writing, music, what have you. Number two, setting and achieving meaningful goals. Number three, acts of kindness and altruism. Number four, lifelong learning and building new skills. Number five, cultivating deep and meaningful relationships. Number six, regular self-reflection and introspection. Number seven, prioritizing well-being and happiness over external validation. Number eight, parenting through authenticity and intentionality. Additionally, It's common for self-actualized people to frequently experience transcendence through peak experiences, threshold experiences, and moments of flow state. So what is a peak experience versus threshold experience versus flow state? A peak experience describes a moment of spiritual joy, awe, or gratitude. It can bring a person a sense of transcendence and great insight. It can happen in the context of creativity, nature, or in a religious setting. It heightens your senses, time slows down, and you feel a sense of unity with the divine. But they occur over short bursts of time. A person doesn't have to be self-actualized in order to have a peak experience, but those who are tend to have them more frequently, and they are more intense. A threshold experience can be just as memorable as a peak experience, but they're different. A threshold experience can take place over the course of hours, days, months, or years. It's disorienting, difficult, unpleasant, and can be accompanied by grief. It can happen after a major life-changing event, such as the death of a loved one, a near-death experience, or the birth of a child, and serves as a gateway for transformation, forcing people to reconfigure their worldview. The idea of a flow state was originally coined by a man named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who observed jazz musicians becoming so mesmerized and immersed in their craft that they would lose track of time. It's almost like a positive feedback loop that keeps a person deeply focused on their task at hand because it's intrinsically rewarding. The notion of a flow state was corroborated by personality researcher Dr. Dario Nardi, who observed EEG scans of people deeply focused on an activity that matched their skill level, while their body and mind operated with fluidity. Some people describe it as being in the zone. A flow state can last for hours as a person remains steadily engaged in their activity. When I was in high school, I had a job at the local library, which was so close I could walk there after school. My job was to alphabetize and shelve books. After about a year and a half of doing this, I was able to mentally check out as I worked. I would enter into states of deep reflection and thought while my hands and arms shelved the books. I believe this is an example of a flow state. So what are some methods that can cultivate self-actualization? So the first thing is inner work, and there are two parts to this. The first is called shadow work. The shadow contains reflections of your own repressed thoughts, feelings, and desires, parts of yourself that you don't want to admit are there, yet are acutely aware of in other people. This gives you a target to focus on for self-development. Try being as honest as you can with yourself and others without oversharing through detached observation, consistent journaling, and of thoughts and feelings, and focusing on the judgments and strong emotions you have for other people, because more than likely they are the result of your own projections, and projections come from the shadow. So if you are with somebody and you're seeing all of these qualities that you don't like about them, just kind of it's like an instinct, you just don't like it, it's probably because it's a reflection of your shadow, that these are attributes you have yourself, and you know it deep down, but you don't like to admit it. So you go, oh, I see it in that person. The second is dream interpretation. I have this recurring dream where I'm inside of this huge old wooden house with the understanding that I live in this house. In the dream, I find a door I've never seen before, and when I step through it, I find a completely new part of the house that I didn't even know was there. So the way I've sort of interpreted this is that the house represents my mind, and finding undiscovered rooms or areas is unlocking hidden parts of my mind. When I see, oh, I've never seen this door before, what's in here? And then I find this whole new space. That's how I interpret it. So the second is creative contribution. Through creativity, we're able to discover our natural gifts and channel our energy into something that is internally fulfilling. It's about making something that you can take pride in because it's a reflection of your truest self. Turning your pain, your mistakes, and your failures or misfortune into something beautiful or into something that can help other people is one of the best feelings. It justifies your experiences and allows you to turn negative feelings like bitterness into gratitude. Then the third thing is cognitive balance. So this is MBTI-guided integration planning. As to whether or not I myself have achieved self-actualization, the answer is definitely no. But I've studied the path and what it looks like. I've used various tools and techniques to become more integrated. The MBTI is a powerful tool for self-development because it maps how our minds process reality and reveals the areas of ourselves we've unknowingly neglected so that we can target those areas for growth. Another name for it is Jungian analytical psychology, and this is something I'll be elaborating on later in another video. What is the role of archetypes in self-actualization? I want to kind of shift gears here a little bit and go into a deeper dive on MBTI and Jungian analytical psychology. I also want to clarify that this model for multiple sides of the mind derives from Carl Jung and not Sigmund Freud, who also developed a model for multiple sides of the mind, but it's different. And I'm not referring to Freud here, I'm referring to Jung. So the first thing is the ego. Your ego is your conscious self, the part of you that feels most natural and requires the least amount of effort. It's the default you, the state that personality tests assess. Then you have the shadow. According to Jung, the shadow is the inverted counterpart of the ego, which means it shares the same attitude as the ego but operates through opposite functions. It contains the traits that people repress and disown, and we often see it in others before we see it in ourselves. And this is what I was talking about earlier with projection. This projection can cause judgment or dislike because it unconsciously reminds us of the aspects we don't like to admit are within ourselves, like I was saying earlier. Integrating the shadow makes us more mature and well-rounded and can help us tap into deeper levels of creativity. So then you have the anima/animus. The anima animus is the part of our mind that we experience as the contrasexual other. For men, it appears as the inner feminine, which is emotional and intuitive. For women, it manifests as the inner masculine, which is logical and assertive. It uses the same cognitive functions found in the ego, but has the opposite attitude. Integrating the anima animus brings balance, happiness, and serves as a bridge between the conscious and the subconscious parts of the mind. There is a consensus among researchers and Jungian psychology that true self-actualization requires integrating both the anima and the shadow. Many people prefer anima animus development because it feels uplifting, it feels affirming, and happily androgynous. Shadow integration, on the other hand, can be more difficult because of the pain and discomfort of confronting parts of ourselves that make us feel ashamed. Yet, shadow work is essential. It brings us into new states of maturity as we age and provides us with the wisdom it takes to navigate adulthood. It moves us closer to completeness. To provide a metaphor using Star Wars, so Luke Skywalker would be the ego, his sister Leia would be his anima, and Darth Vader is his shadow, just as sort of a representation of the mind. So that's the end of this video. I wanted to say thank you for joining me and thank you for listening. If you'd like to leave any comments down below, I would love that. I like to read my comments. You guys are so smart and so supportive and nice and very wonderful people out there. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I will be making a new video very shortly, going a little bit farther into the MBTI and the process for that. So hopefully you are going to have a good day today, and I'll see you next time.